Qin put away the 3 divine books, although the road to the end did not give him any materials. These 3 divine books are far more precious than any materials. To give an example, the reward for playing the road to the abyss is to let the ancient gods give a small amount of fish, but the reward for the road to the end is to let the ancient gods teach you how to fish. This concept is not on the same level. I thought so. After playing the road to the end, you are not allowed to play the road to the abyss, nor are you allowed to play the road to despair. So this reward is so outrageous. From then on, Qin achieved freedom of high-level materials. This made Qin very emotional. You know, the total number of peeling stones he used in his last life was only a dozen or 20 every time he used one. He was extremely heartbroken, especially when he failed to use it. He wanted to cry. Every time Qin used this kind of high-level material in his last life, there were special effects or orders that had to be peeled off. Once successful, it can greatly improve his combat power. However, every time Qin Xiaoyu found out, he said he was too wasteful. Qin explained to her, but she said he was a male chauvinist who would not listen to other people's opinions. Fortunately, all this is going to end. Sure enough, without Qin Xiaoyu, everything is much smoother. Now Qin can buy dozens of such high-level materials with a wave of his hand. Half an hour later, Qin went to the ruins of Hangzhou City and Sunan City respectively, and killed the NPCs of the Tower of Divine Power in these 2 ruins. The former was a red-haired werewolf, the latter was an elegant winged man. After solving the problem, Qin threw the 2 NPCs into the Judgment Land, intending to use them to sprint to the 300-point divinity limit so as to judge Qin Xiaoyu. When Qin returned to the Judgment Land, he saw that Qin Xiaoyu in the dark area had been integrated into memory, but could not move for the time being. Qin ignored her. First, the 2 NPCs were judged. Qin checked their memories a bit, but unfortunately they were all low-level NPCs, weaker than Virginie, and no additional information was obtained. What made Qin a little speechless was, the birdman with white feathers had a very elegant life in the past. In the civilization where it lived, winged people were upper nobles, and ordinary humans were all lowly slaves. This exiled winged man had a quirk of serving ordinary humans to the table, which led to his exile by the big guys of the ordinary human camp after the advent of the god-forsaken game. What made Qin speechless was, when this birdman was in the Tower of Divine Power, his elegant posture also gained a lot of female fans. In the ruins of Sunan City, many female fans go to see this birdman in groups every day. If they knew that in the eyes of this birdman, they were just lowly slaves or even food, would they still be so obsessed with it? Qin was very skeptical. What's even more ridiculous is that when he was about to kill the birdman, many female players stood up and petitioned for it, asking Qin not to kill it. Perhaps it was because of the previous experience of the Rose Guild, so the words used by those female players were very careful and humble. They almost knelt down to beg Qin. It's a pity that Qin didn't buy it, just ignored them. Of course, in order to avoid people talking nonsense, Qin played its memory in the Judgment Land after judging the birdman, and then adjusted the angle of the light and shadow crystal to record its memory scenes of oppressing and eating humans. Maybe it can be used, and after Qin judged the werewolf and the birdman, the upper limit of the divinity of the Judgment Blade finally increased to 301 points. It reached the level of being able to judge Qin Xiaoyu. Not bad. After the trial of Qin Xiaoyu is over, how much can the divine limit and attributes be improved? Qin was still looking forward to it. Just at this time, he raised his hand. Finally, Qin Xiaoyu, who was frozen in the dark area, was sent to the sky above the White Jade Maze area. The trial starts, in Xiaoyu's memory. The fusion is over. In the wounds, she felt her consciousness blurred, and she could no longer see the devil-like face of the woman in front of her. The pain from her whole body made her regret coming to this world. In the past, she would scream in pain when touched by a monster. But now, when she was cut thousands of times, she wished she would die immediately. Fortunately, this is just a memory. It's finally over. This is my last life. And in this life, I left Qin. Although I died early, it was a blessing in disguise. I will never meet this woman again, since I have all the memories of my last life. Will I keep these memories after rebirth? Now let me be reborn? Such a thought echoed in Qin Xiaoyu's mind. But at this moment, she suddenly regained consciousness and suddenly opened her eyes. The scene that came into her eyes was an extremely strange but somewhat familiar space with a hazy white jade light everywhere. And she was suspended in the air because of a strange power. In front of her, there was a towering white jade platform. Where is this? The place of rebirth. Just as she thought so, she suddenly saw a familiar but strange figure standing on the white jade platform. It was Qin wearing the metal light armor of the Ascension machine. He wore a dark white mask on his face, his eyes were emotionless, and he looked down at Qin Xiaoyu from the white jade platform. Shadow. Where is this place? The moment Qin Xiaoyu saw Qin, she realized that the situation seemed different from what she thought. When she died, she did not reborn with her memories in the next life. Instead, she appeared in such a strange place. No, this place is what place of judgment? It's the scene I dreamed of before. After that dream, I had some memories of my previous life in my mind. Qin Xiaoyu was slightly relieved after recalling this. So I'm still dreaming. So she calmed down. She even looked at the shadow in front of her with interest. It's so unlucky. Why did I dream about you? Qin Xiaoyu looked at Qin and couldn't help complaining. Didn't I just dig out your eyes? Why did you die? Did you die on purpose to hurt me? When she thought that she was stabbed tens of thousands of times by that woman because Qin Feng died, she felt resentful. According to that woman, if Qin Feng hadn't died, she would have blocked 9,000 knives for her in every life. And Qin Feng. Originally, I wanted to hear if she had anything to say before judging her, and before the memory merged. As a result, I heard this sentence. I was immediately confused. This guy is too extreme, right? Of course, Qin Feng would not be angry about it now. He said calmly, "Why did I die? Don't you have to ask your brother Song Fei?" Qin Xiaoyu was disgusted when he heard the name. Get lost. Don't mention him. Qin Feng was happy. Is this after the memory fusion? Finally seeing Song Fei's true face? Qin Feng had said it no less than 100 times before. But Qin Xiaoyu simply couldn't listen to what the closest person, said. It doesn't matter. Qin Feng shook his head. Since you have come to the place of judgment, your life has ended forever, and you can't enter reincarnation again. As for what you will encounter next, Sisi. Like her, will she end up in a frying pan or a mountain of knives? Qin Feng asked Ashak Sisi, who was standing behind him. Ashak Sisi pursed her lips and smiled softly. That must be both. It can be seen that she is in a good mood. Because when Qin Feng first came, he asked her about the road to the end. Let her know that Qin Feng got first place in the road to the end. From that moment on, there was a kind of joy and relief in Ashashi's pale golden eyes, similar to the joy and relief of a parent seeing his child finally get first place in the class. However, Qin Feng did not ask about the situation of the white bud blade for the time being. Let's talk about it after the trial of Qin Xiaoyu. And Qin Xiaoyu listened to Qin Feng's words and heard a sacred and noble female voice echoing in this space, which made her suddenly feel a little bit wrong. Originally, she thought it was her dream. But this dream is too clear, right? The most important thing is, why did she dream of someone she had never seen before? Shisi. What Shisi? Qin Feng. Which little vixen are you talking to? Qin Xiaoyu's face changed slightly. Looking at Qin Feng, it was obvious that she could only see a figure shrouded in sacred light behind Qin Feng, but she couldn't see the figure clearly. Hearing this, Ashashi's was not angry. After all, in her eyes, Qin Xiaoyu was not even an ant. How could she be angry with an ant? Qin Feng sneered. Okay, I'll make it worse. Seeing that Qin Xiaoyu had not regretted it yet, Qin Feng regretted wasting time here. He was too lazy to talk nonsense with the other party and raised his hand. Start the trial. I'll make it worse. Qin Xiaoyu also sneered. Qin Feng. You just reborn once and became a shadow? What basis do you have to judge me guilty? What crime have I committed? Before she finished speaking, boom! The mini-game of the Judgment Land started. Her consciousness fell into a deep sleep at this moment, and Qin Feng used the authority of judgment to start viewing all her memories from her perspective. The memories of the previous life and this life can be skipped directly. Let's see what happened after she dug out my eyes. Qin Feng was still quite curious about this part. It's not that he was curious about how Qin Xiaoyu died, but he was curious about how Blue Star developed after his death in the previous life, Blue Star Civilization. How many people went to the Land of Order? Perhaps some information can be obtained through Qin Xiaoyu's memory. So, in front of Qin Feng, a series of memory pictures centered on Qin Xiaoyu slowly appeared. When she hurriedly left the Pure Soul Land with a pair of eyeballs in her hands, rode on the Swan Mount, and flew towards Song Fei, Qin Feng watched coldly. With no expression on his face, when she arrived at Paradise, entered the hall, excitedly gave her eyeballs to Song Fei, and was kicked away by Song Fei. Qin Feng still watched coldly. But when the charming woman codenamed A Fate I Am Not Sister Li came to Qin Xiaoyu and cut off her wrist, and when Song Fei ran over and spoke to the woman in a flattering manner, Qin Feng suddenly frowned. Sister Li, Sichuan Poison Sister. I heard before that Song Fei was related to some underground organization. This underground organization belongs to Sichuan Poison Sister. Interesting. It seems that I still have an enemy in this life that I haven't gotten rid of. Qin Feng sneered. This is an unexpected gain from Qin Xiaoyu's memory. Han Feng learned who else killed him in his previous life. I said that my resistance to toxins in my previous life was not low. Ordinary toxins are not fatal to me. But since she is the Sichuan Poison Sister, it is normal. When she heard the system prompt that I got the ancient god's eyeball, she started planning, and under her, there are many former stars, both men and women. She also has connections with many big. I have private communication with many big guys, and I provide obedient toys for many big guys. So she investigated me and Qin Xiaoyu, and knew that she was a fan of Song Fei. Then she used Song Fei to achieve her goal. At this point, Qin Feng finally restored the cause of his death in detail. If this woman was from Zhanghai City, I would definitely be wary of her, but she has never dealt with Zhanghai City. That's why Qin Feng didn't deliberately guard against the woman's tactics. It's funny. From the codename of Sister Li, she was doing related business before the godforsaken game came. She has a lot of national flight under her. But I didn't expect that after the godforsaken game came, this woman was still doing this business, and even got bigger and bigger. A fate I'm not Sister Li. This codename is to keep the front row in people's friend list. But she certainly didn't expect that in the friend list of the godforsaken game. The numbers starting with will be ranked before the codes, starting with letters. Of course, this does not affect her business. Very quickly, Sister Lee got Qinfeng's eyeball and teleported away directly. Then, Gu Yishu and the people from the God-Slaying Guild came over. In the crowd, Qinfeng saw many familiar faces from the previous life. Chuyan and Yang Xiaoya were also among them. Like Gu Yishu, they were shocked and angry about what happened. No matter what the situation, they always had to take Qin Xiaoyu back and let their guild deal with it. But I didn't expect. In the end, Qin Xiaoyu was still taken away by Chen Wuming. This guy is still so cunning. Is he trying to get the God-Slaying Guild to pay a lifespan to redeem Qin Xiaoyu? Qinfeng was a little speechless. The perspective after that was a little boring, because Qin Xiaoyu had been locked up in the cell of the church sanctuary and was mentally abused. In the previous life, the church sanctuary was taken by Chen Wuming. However, the church sanctuary in this life was taken by Qin Feng and sold to the Zhanghai city officials. After Gu Yishui became the president, he led the brothers of the God-Slaying Guild to an expedition to Sichuan and Shu. I heard that they cooperated with the Shudao Shan Guild and the Daxia officials to fight against the power of the Sichuan Poison Sister. But after I died, the God-Slaying Guild did not have a divine weapon, and it was almost difficult to stir up any waves in such a confrontation. Qinfeng was frowning. It was in this situation Blue Star finally started the fusion of reality and games, and countless monsters poured into reality. It's a pity that all this has nothing to do with Qin Xiaoyu. Qin Xiaoyu can only stay in prison and enjoy the mental torture of Chen Wuming. She won't die here, right? Just when Qinfeng thought that there was nothing to observe behind Qin Xiaoyu's memory, suddenly, the final change came. Just when Qin Xiaoyu was bullied by two women, suddenly, the two women floated in the air, raised their hands in fear, formed a human cross, and then the blood-red nails in the void attacked, nailing them into scarlet human crosses. What is this method? It looks like some kind of rule. Just when Qinfeng thought so, suddenly, in a red mist, a woman appeared in front of Qin Xiaoyu, and her words and her appearance shocked Qinfeng. Who is this person? Qinfeng looked from the perspective of Qin Xiaoyu's memory, and saw the woman in front of him with an innocent and sweet smile on her face. She looked about the same age as Qin Xiaoyu, even the two looked similar. Of course, the difference was still very obvious. Qinfeng saw at a glance that the woman had a teardrop mole under her right eye. In the scarlet blood mist, her smile looked sweet, but more creepy. She knows me and Qin Xiaoyu, but I don't have any impression of her. She came from the Land of Order. Qinfeng reacted immediately. This woman was definitely someone he knew in the previous reincarnation. It's just that in a certain reincarnation, this woman arrived at the Land of Order and then stayed in the Land of Order. In the subsequent reincarnation, her existence was completely erased from Blue Star. There are two forms of existence being erased. One is like Virginie. She has descendants in that world, and it is impossible to completely cover up the evidence of her existence. So the memories of related people need to be modified. But there is another way to completely erase the traces of her existence. Because of this, in the war civilization of the killing executioner Diarbad, those strong men who came from the Land of Order to help were not recognized by anyone at all. And now, Qinfeng encountered a similar situation. He can be sure that the woman who appeared in front of Qin Xiaoyu is related to Qin Xiaoyu by blood. Otherwise, they can't look so similar. Qinfeng was extremely confused in his mind, but he didn't make random guesses. Cause then, when the woman showed her face from the blood mist, the first person to be shocked and collapse was Qin Xiaoyu. You, who are you? Who are you? Qin Xiaoyu screamed in fear and nervousness. It starts again. The woman sighed softly, with a hint of amusement at the corner of her mouth. Every time I come down to see you, you always look so surprised. Can't you be a little cold like your brother? Oh no, I should be a little calmer? I haven't spoken Daxia language for a long time, and I'm really a little rusty. After saying this, she looked at Qin Xiaoyu with interest again. Of course, since you asked, I will be merciful to tell you. My name is Qin Wuye, and I'm your sister. It's normal that you don't remember me. After all, I have long transcended this world. Now, I'm back. Of course, I'm only back temporarily, and I'll leave after I finish my business. So, speaking of this, the woman smiled meaningfully. Cherish the time you spend with me. The next time will definitely make you unforgettable. The woman, or Qin Wuyue, she turned around while speaking. In the scarlet blood mist, her long blood-red hair moved without wind, and on the back of the red robe she wore, there were several noble and sacred ancient divine words. Qin Xiaoyu naturally couldn't understand those ancient divine words, but now Qinfeng recognized it at a glance. Blood Source Temple. Isn't this the power of the Blood Source ancient god? The Goddess of Death has the Death Temple organization in the Land of Order. The Soul Emperor has the Well of Souls organization in the Land of Order. Perhaps, in the Land of Order, every ancient god will have such an organization that represents their power. Then, what about the ancient god of judgment that I represent? Qinfeng recalled, in Virginie's memory. This mother had entered the Court of Judgment, but unfortunately she had not really started the challenge, and gave up and left because of the child's matter. What does the Court of Judgment have to do with the authority of judgment and the ancient god of judgment? If Virginie passes the challenge of the Court of Judgment, can she join the Land of Order, the organization that represents the judgment of the ancient gods? And now, I have the power of judgment, the token of the Goddess of Death, and the former owner of the power of soul. Can I join 3 factions at the same time? Qinfeng was a little skeptical, but now he didn't have time to think about it. Because in Qin Xiaoyu's memory, The woman named Qin Wuyue had already taken Qin Xiaoyu to the outside of the church sanctuary, Qin Xiaoyu, who hadn't seen the sun for a long time. Just like that, she was lifted up by some kind of force, floating in the air. Following behind Qin Wuyu, she was still immersed in the shock that she actually had a sister. Sister, since you are my sister, you are here to save me, right? Qin Xiaoyu seemed to think she was saved. Qin Wuyue floated in front, her head also, without replying. He said calmly, "How many times do I have to tell you? I'm here to kill you." Impossible. Qin Xiaoyu was very excited. "If you are really my sister, why did you come back to kill me?" "Why?" Qin Wuyue smiled meaningfully. "Of course, killing you will be good for me. Oh, by the way, there is also Qin Feng. You and him were killed by me again and again, and I became stronger again and again. Speaking of which, I have to thank you." "What?" Qin Xiaoyu was stunned and could not understand what the other party said at all. But Qin Wuyue did not explain more. At this moment, they floated into the hall of the church sanctuary one after another. Outside the window, the gray sky shone into the hall. And in the hall, including Chen Wuming, a total of hundreds of Knights Templar players were made into scarlet human crosses. Floating in the air, the whole picture was extremely terrifying. You, a horse?" Dry voice came from the side. Qin Xiaoyu was startled and turned his head to look. It was Chen Wuming. The mythical heavy armor on his body was broken. His dragon eagle mount was dead beside him, covered in blood, and his body was pierced by dozens of blood holes with blood-colored nails. The whole person was also posed in the shape of a cross, and his face was already covered in blood. But he is not dead yet. Or rather, he was temporarily resurrected for a while. "Hey, Chen Wuming, you are not dead yet." Qin Wuyue floated over with a smile. With his hands behind his back, looking at Chen Wuming, who was unable to move with interest. "It seems that your development in this life is a little better than before. Ignorant people. So pitiful. Originally, I was too lazy to kill you. But who asked you to bring Qin Xiaoyu back?" After the voice fell, Qin Wuyue smiled and raised his right hand and waved. In the void, hundreds of blood-colored long nails pierced Chen Wuming's body again, killing him completely. Before he died, Chen Wuming stared at Qin Xiaoyu with eyes wide open, regretting deeply. "Damn it! I shouldn't have brought her back. Being with this Qin Xiaoyu will make me unhappy. With such regret, Chen Wuming died. Zhanghai ruins, where the church sanctuary is hidden. Tens of thousands of blood-red crosses floated in the air, and a blood-red female figure suddenly flew out in the scarlet blood mist. Behind her was Qin Xiaoyu. "Let's go. Before I kill you, I'll show you my methods." Qin Wuyue stepped on the blood mist and flew into the sky. Her expression gradually became indifferent. "Even if I want to kill you and Qin Feng, I have to kill them. Watch out. I will avenge your brother first. You are also a fool. Your brother got a little power, and you took it for yourself. But you actually gave it to an outsider. What's in your mind?" Accompanied by Qin Wuyue's sneer, the blood mist condensed in front of her and quickly formed a blood-colored vortex. Xin Feng followed into the blood-colored vortex through Qin Xiaoyu's memory perspective. When he opened his eyes, he found that the scene had changed. The blood-colored vortex turned out to be a transmission channel, which instantly allowed Qin Xiaoyu to arrive at the Sichuan Shu area of Daxia. At this time, Qin Xiaoyu was completely dumbfounded. She saw countless monsters flying around in the sky, densely packed and dark, and the Sichuan Shu city area in front had become precarious, and there was no sunlight at all. Is this the attack of the monsters fused in the game? Qin Xiaoyu's heartbeat became extremely fast. If she came here alone, she would be eaten by the monsters around her in less than a second. But when Qin Wuyue arrived, the monsters didn't dare to approach at all, and they all moved around to make way for her. Are they here to kill Sister Li and snatch the ancient god's eyeball from her? Qin Feng was immediately interested when he saw this. Qin Feng was very curious now. If this woman returned from the land of order, then the fusion of Blue Star failed in the last life. Logically, she should have returned to reincarnation. But why didn't Qin Feng see her in this life? In addition, after killing him and Qin Xiaoyu, why did Qin Wuyue become stronger? Continue to check the memory. Maybe you can get the answer. Another 4 chapters, asking for power generation with love. Big brothers, please reward me. In Qin Xiaoyu's memory, when the game and reality began to merge, every area of Blue Star was in dire straits. I didn't feel it just now in the church sanctuary hideout. Now coming to the Sichuan region, Qin Feng found that this place was already a hellish scene. In the sky and on the ground, there were groups of hundreds of monsters everywhere, in groups, bringing endless destruction to the whole world. The Sichuan region is mostly mountainous terrain. On each mountain, there are basically player guilds stationed and built various types of hideouts. Many guilds rely on the defensive barriers of the hideouts to barely resist the continuous monster attacks. As for the outside of the hideout, it's all the monsters' territory. No human can survive, except Qin Wuyue, who brought Qin Xiaoyu here. She was dressed in blood-red clothes, surrounded by scarlet color, with a calm expression. Wherever she went, no matter what kind of monsters they were, they all fled in panic and scattered in all directions. From the memory scene, Xin Feng could feel Qin Xiaoyu's fear. There were monsters everywhere, but they were far less terrifying than the blood red in front. Along the way, whenever Qin Feng passed a certain mountain or a certain hiding place, he could hear people screaming, shouting, and communicating. Hold on. Everyone. Our Big Dipper from the Magic City is back. When we solve the monsters in the Magic City, Big Dipper will come to help us. Come on. The Magic City is so far away. How could he come to our Sichuan? It's over. Everything is over. There are so many monsters. We can't stop them at all. It's okay to die. Anyway, you will come back after you die. Some people even rushed into the monster group frantically to kill themselves and shouted frantically before dying, "My baby, I'm here. I want to be with you when everything comes back." Soon, Qin Wuye brought Qin Xiaoyu to a valley. This valley seemed to be full of birdsong and flowers, and the environment was elegant. There was a hiding place in the ancient style of Daxia, the soul-stirring cave. It was a complex of pavilions and towers, and its defensive barrier was epic. This also makes the soul-enchanting cave one of the most defensive hiding places in the Sichuan region, and the owner of this hiding place is Sister Li, who is respected as the Sichuan Poison Sister. When Qin Wuye arrived, he saw that the soul-enchanting cave was already surrounded by monsters, and on the terraces a few kilometers away, there was an area completely covered with ice and snow. Oh, is it her? Qin Wuye looked over there with interest. It was Gu Yishui, who was leading thousands of players from the God-Slaying Guild and was stationed in the terrace area with her large-scale freezing order. Due to the influence of the freezing order, there were many monsters around that area, ready to move. However, once the monsters attacked, they would be frozen and then destroyed, so a temporary safe area appeared in that ice and snow area. Official personnel from Sichuan and Shu were trying to persuade Gu Yishui earnestly. "Girl, please help me. We are under great pressure to defend here. If you come to help, we can save more people." Unfortunately, Gu Yishui didn't listen at all. She said with a miserable smile, "Anyway, as long as it is destroyed, everything will start over. Why not let it go? That way Brother Feng can still survive." Official personnel were a little anxious. "I know your president will die, but even if you fail and start over, you will lose your memory. Everything may just start over again." Gu Yishui shook her head with a firm tone. "Even if you lose your memory, as long as you start over enough times, we can always fight side by side and live together to the end now. We must at least let Brother Feng die with his eyes closed and keep his body." Qin Feng saw this scene through Qin Xiaoyu's perspective, looking at the members of the Godslayer Guild in the snow, with thousands of people, ready to attack the soul-eating cave with the monsters at any time. Even Qin Feng was a little surprised. "They are so persistent," Qin Feng sighed secretly. When the game and reality begin to merge and the rules of civilization, sublimation are known to everyone, then naturally many people will have the idea of destroying everything. Anyway, everything will start over. In the 9 years since the godforsaken game came, who hasn't lost a few relatives and friends? Many people do not want to sublimate civilization under this state. At this time, many human individuals are contradictory. They don't want to die and don't want everything to start over. But when the situation is unbearable, when doing it, there will not be too much pressure. This also leads to the fact that every civilization faces many obstacles in its sublimation, compared with the monsters everywhere. Perhaps this kind of internal contradiction is the biggest obstacle that makes it difficult for civilization to sublimate. But as long as the civilization is sublimated, the people who survive can truly achieve immortality. As long as there is enough life, you can survive and develop all the time. And sooner or later you can reach the land of order, only after the sublimation of civilization. It will be a truly powerful civilization. Qin Feng is very clear about this. Ashashis once said that there will be many hidden benefits after the sublimation of civilization, although I don't know what the benefits are for the time being. But the overall strength of a civilization that has been in a state of reincarnation is impossible to become strong. How many strong people in the land of order can be cultivated every 10 years? And if it is sublimated, I am afraid that thousands of strong people who are strong enough to go to the land of order will emerge every year, because, judging from the situation in Diyarbad, after a civilization is sublimated, it will leave the place called Wandering Land and go directly to the land of order, becoming an affiliated part of the land of order. Then, the strong people in the land of order can travel back and forth between the civilization and the land of order at any time. Even different sublimated civilizations can communicate with each other. It is equivalent to opening cross-server, whether it is knowledge, equipment, skills, materials, and other resources. The output will show explosive growth. The top quality equipment that was originally hard to come by may be easily bought in other civilizations. After all, some civilizations have been sublimated for hundreds and thousands of years. How many resources can be accumulated in such a long time? If civilization cannot be sublimated, people like Gu Yishui will find it difficult to reach the land of order no matter how many times they come back. After all, her profession and talent are basically fixed. Every time she reincarnates, she is always just a little bit away from that step. That little bit will never make it across, but after sublimation, she can have more time to develop. And in another year or two, she can reach the land of order. Indeed, if you can reincarnate and never die, it may not be a bad thing. Sublimation, or starting all over again, for any civilization. This is a question worth thinking about, and there is no doubt that the answer to this question must be determined by the top powerhouses that emerge in each civilization every 10 years. At present, it seems that there are not many players returning from the land of order in this reincarnation. Only You Are Dead in the Magic City and Nikana in North America. The Dragon Palace Guard have returned. Once they choose to return, They can't leave and can only live and die with Blue Star. But what's wrong with this Qin Wuyue? Qinfeng continued to observe the memory. Qin Wuyue came to the hiding place of the soul-stirring cave, just glanced at Gu Yishui, and ignored it. For her, the small authority is obviously very important. When she came to the sky above the soul-stirring cave, she just raised her hand casually. Suddenly, the defensive barrier that originally protected the hiding place of the soul-stirring cave turned blood red and turned into a sea of blood, boiling and rolling. For a moment, Sister Li's subordinates, who originally relied on the defensive barrier to resist the monsters and the attacks of Gu Yishui and others, all screamed miserably. They were affected by the aura of the blood-red defensive barrier, and the blood in their bodies actually boiled. Countless people bled from all 7 orifices, and the entire soul-stirring cave turned into a scene like hell on earth, and this horrible scene immediately attracted the attention of Gu Yishui and others not far away. Is it Qin Xiaoyu? Look, who's next to Qin Xiaoyu? She looks a bit like her. I haven't heard that Qin Xiaoyu has any relatives. She's very powerful. She must have returned from the Land of Order. Is she someone who went to the Land of Order in the early years and never came back, and disappeared from our memory? Wait, no matter who this woman is, she didn't come back before. But she's back now. Could it be that she wants to sublimate our civilization? No. Sublimate civilization at least? Not now. People were surprised and talked about it. They quickly made the most reasonable guess that Qin Wuyue's return was likely to promote the sublime civilization. Let's go. Gu Yishu gritted her teeth and took everyone to fly towards Qin Wuyue in the memory of Qin Xiaoyu that Qin Feng was looking at. Gu Yishu and others were approaching quickly. Who are you? Are you a relative of Qin Feng and Qin Xiaoyu? Gu Yishu asked from a distance, since you left them behind. Why are you back now? Do you know that Qin Feng died at the hands of Qin Xiaoyu? Qin Feng heard that her words were reserved. She would not allow anyone to promote the sublimation of the civilization of Blue Star this time. But she could not talk to Qin Wuyue like this, because she was not Qin Wuyue's opponent at all. Even if she wanted to stop Qin Wuyue, she could not talk to him directly in person. Oh. Hearing Gu Yishui's voice, Qin Wuyue smiled faintly. To be honest, I will come back every time I reincarnate. I am also very sorry for Qin Feng's death. After all, this means that he can't die in my hands. Hearing this, Gu Aishu and others were all full of question marks. What does this woman mean? Okay, since you're all going to die anyway, I'll give you a little help. Qin Wuyue didn't plan to waste time talking to them. As soon as she finished speaking, her pupils turned blood red. She only glanced at Gu Yishui, and then a terrifying and unstoppable rule power was exerted on Gu Yishui and others. In this sea of blood, Gu Yishu and the players of the Godslayer Guild behind her lost their ability to move at the same time. They were forced to open their arms and make a cross shape the next moment. Everyone's body was pierced by dozens or hundreds of blood holes by the blood-colored spikes coming from the void. Humans are so fragile. Qin Wuyue walked forward expressionlessly. Let the thousands of blood-colored human crosses float in the air. The surrounding ice and snow gradually dissipated and were covered by the endless scarlet blood mist. It's a good death. Qin Xiaoyu looked at this scene and muttered softly. This made Qin Feng, who was checking his memory, a little speechless. Gu Yishu was usually very nice to Qin Xiaoyu. When Qin Feng was not around, Gu Yishu often took Qin Xiaoyu to level up and kill monsters, and she would share a large part of the life of the equipment she got. As a result, now, Qin Xiaoyu said good death. Qin Wuyue, do you really think that we will all reincarnate anyway? And we will all lose our memories? So you are completely unscrupulous when killing people? Qin Feng thought coldly. Just then, Qin Wuyue took Qin Xiaoyu and flew to the door of the hall of the soul-stirring cave. She raised her hand, and a scarlet blood mist rolled a figure covered in blood and whose face could not be seen clearly in front of her. Where is your president, Sister Li? Dead. Dead. The blood-covered figure wailed in pain. Auntie, let me go. Let me die happily. Dead. How did she die? Qin Wuyue frowned slightly. Answer me. I will give you a happy death. The man spurted blood, coughed and laughed miserably. She snatched back a pair of eyeballs, wanted to fuse the eyeballs, but when she fused, the whole person was melted by the eyeballs. Ha 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 ha, dead. Everyone must die. Everyone must die. Bang! The man was still laughing crazily, and suddenly his whole body exploded, and blood splattered all over Qin Xiaoyu's body. Qin Wuyue, on the other hand, was not affected by the blood at all. All the blood automatically formed layers of translucent blood-colored shields when it approached her bloody but elegant, fused with small authority, but melted by the carrier of small authority. Qin Wuyue frowned and muttered to herself. I have never heard of such a situation. Qin Xiaoyu, who was standing aside, seemed to see a glimmer of hope when she heard this. She immediately said flatteringly, Sister, what exactly is small authority? Maybe I can provide you with more information? After all, I am with Qin Feng every day, as long as you don't kill me. Qin Wuyue glanced at her lightly, and there seemed to be some sarcasm in her eyes. But turning back, he nodded and said, Just now, I asked Chen Wuming and learned that Qin Feng had obtained an ancient god eyeball. This is the carrier of the small power, just like my finger. At this time, Qin Xiaoyu saw that there was a blood-red finger pattern on the back of Qin Wuyue's right hand. Perhaps it was not a pattern, but a real finger embedded on the back of her hand. Looking at the finger, Qin Xiaoyu felt creepy, as if the blood in his body was about to flow backwards, and quickly looked away. Come to think of it, This finger was given to me by Qin Feng. Qin Wuye seemed to be nostalgic. For me, it was more than 200 years ago. Looking back, he was so good to you and me back then. But this is also for your own good. My ruthless talent is more compatible with the finger of the blood god one day. I will grow to the strongest. At that time, I will come back to sublimate the Blue Star civilization and then protect you. In this world, only strength is everything. Although you have to suffer a little in this process, it's all worth it. Anyway, you will all forget it in the end, right? As long as it's that last time. I appear in front of you, lead Blue Star to sublimate, and then lead you into a new era. I am still your good sister. After hearing these words, Qin Xiaoyu felt a little numb on his scalp. Even Qin Feng, who was watching all this from the perspective of Qin Xiaoyu's memory, was speechless. Indeed, this sister is so kind that she gives us 10,000 knives every time she reincarnates and kills us. Huan Feng felt a chill in his heart. If it is said that Qin Xiaoyu is too stupid, then this Qin Wuye is definitely not so easy to deal with. Although Qin Feng has never reached that level, he can feel. The current Qin Wuye is terribly strong. How much can she develop after more than 200 years of development? What's more, on her body, there is also the finger of the blood source ancient god that Qin Feng gave her, which is the carrier of a small authority. It is very likely that with this thing, Qin Wuye can choose to return during the fusion and leave Blue Star before it is completely destroyed. This is what makes her different from other powerful people in the Land of Order. Does that finger have the same ability as my Eye of the God of Judgment? Does it also give her the original primary talent? Han Feng was not sure, but it seemed that Qin Wuye was not that strong. After all, judging from the means she released, all of this was still within Qin Feng's understanding. Qin Feng asked himself, if he were given more than 200 years now, the degree to which he could develop would be absolutely unimaginable. And now Qin Feng knew it. After his death, his eye was obtained by Sister Li, but when Sister Li wanted to merge, it was directly melted by the ancient god's eye. It was equivalent to saying his ancient god's eye was bound after it was obtained. It even followed him to the next reincarnation. But in comparison, the blood-colored finger of the blood source ancient god was given to Qin Wuye by Qin Feng at the time. What was the specific situation? Whether it was really given or something else, Qin Feng didn't know. But from this, we can see that the finger was not a bound thing. So, my ancient god eyeball is different from the ancient god finger I gave her. Is the level of judging the ancient god higher? Or is there another reason? Qin Feng didn't know for the time being, so he could only ask Ashashi's later. And Qin Xiaoyu's next memory was not very interesting. After learning that Qin Feng's ancient god eyeball had melted and disappeared, Qin Wuye seemed to be in a bad mood and didn't get any useful information from Qin Xiaoyu. Then, Qin Wuye took Qin Xiaoyu to a closed room. After washing her, he nailed her wrists and ankles to a cross with long nails. Then in Qin Xiaoyu's desperate eyes, Qin Wuye took out a knife. The picture Qin Feng viewed through his memory was gradually stained with blood, and Qin Xiaoyu's painful screams in his ears became smaller and weaker. After who knows how many knives, the memory picture finally ended. Oh my god, so miserable. There are still masters. Qin Feng was a little terrified. He even thought about it. In the previous reincarnation, he and Qin Xiaoyu lived together until the 9th year. He was the one who endured 9,000 cuts and let Qin Xiaoyu die with 1,000 cuts. The more painful your death is, the greater my improvement will be. The greater my improvement, the stronger my strength will be. The stronger my strength is, the happier you will be in the future. So, I'm doing this for your own good. Qin Feng's mind still had some crazy words from Qin Wuye, mixed with Qin Xiaoyu's screams and cries for mercy. It made Qin Feng feel a little sympathetic to Qin Xiaoyu. Of course, this was just the remaining moral conscience of Qin Feng. In fact, if Qin Xiaoyu hadn't indirectly killed Qin Feng, she wouldn't have endured so many cuts. As long as Qin Feng was there, she only had to endure 1/10 of the pain. From a certain point of view, she was asking for trouble. But, although Qin Wuye is gone, she will come back when Blue Star merges the God-abandoned game this time, if I go to the Land of Order. Will I meet her? Such a question popped up in Qin Feng's mind. Just after he finished reading Qin Xiaoyu's memory, the power of judgment was automatically activated, consuming Qin Feng's life of 30,000 years. Judgment completed. The basic attribute of Blade of Judgment increased by 226%. The upper limit of divinity of Blade of Judgment increased by 226 points. Do you want to observe the illusion of the target of judgment? Blade of Judgment. The upper limit of divinity and the basic attributes have all skyrocketed. The upper limit of divinity has reached 531 points. The basic attribute has increased by 521%. Let's not talk about the attack power for now. The other cooling speed, attack speed, and hit correction have all been increased to 546, 48%. Counting the effect of dual blade mastery, these three attributes have exceeded 765%. And next, Han Feng can use the Book of Divine Grant to create strengthening stones to strengthen and improve these basic terms. This time when I go back, I will transform and build the equipment, and the improvement will be great. However, compared with Qin Wuye, the gap is still too big. Fortunately, She doesn't know that I am developing at an unimaginable speed with the power of judgment, Qin Feng thought to himself. In any case, Qin Feng doesn't want to be slaughtered by Qin Wuyu again the next time he sees her. Let's see where Qin Xiaoyu was punished. Qin Feng is not still interested in Qin Xiaoyu, but he is a little curious about the limit of the Judgment Blade. What kind of punishment will be given in Qin Xiaoyu at this time? She didn't know that her memory had been completely seen through by Qin Feng. When she was tried and lost consciousness, she subconsciously thought that the place of trial was just a dream, although it felt a little wrong. She didn't think too much. Suddenly, she woke up. As soon as she woke up, she was horrified because she found that she was still nailed to a cross. And in front of her, a figure appeared. The figure was originally in the dark and slowly walked toward her. Soon she found out. The figure seemed to be an official holding a pair of pliers in his hand, and the official's face was actually Qin Feng's face. The official came to her with an expressionless face. Is this the tongue-pulling hell? Qin Feng saw it and felt quite novel. But why is the executioner in the illusion myself? Until then, Qin Xiaoyu finally understood why did Qin Feng convict her. Tongue-pulling hell, scissors hell, iron tree hell, steamer, copper pillar, ox pit, stone pressure, knife saw. It turned out that the punishments of the 18 levels of hell came one by one. Even though she had just been tortured by Qin Wuyu, these hellish punishments were still very fresh, making her fall into endless pain again. And the most important thing is, the executioners in these hells are all officials of the underworld with Qin Feng's face. So, Qin Xiaoyu found out that she had put on the mask of pain again. Hey, why do you say again? Good guy. I wonder if these illusions can make her realize where she went wrong? Qin Feng was very curious. Qin Feng ignored Qin Xiaoyu for the time being. After the trial, Qin Feng learned a lot from Qin Xiaoyu's memory, and these things will determine the key to his future actions. Originally, I wanted to go to the Land of Order as early as possible, but now it seems if I rashly go to the Land of Order, I may be intercepted by Qin Wuyu. She has developed more than 20 reincarnations, a full 200 years. Now I am definitely not her opponent. Qin Feng had a headache. Of course, we will talk about the future later. For now, let's first clarify the questions that can be solved when Qin Feng's mind returned. He felt that Ashashi's was still standing behind his right side, respectfully bowing her head. Shishi, do you know about Qin Wuyu? Qin Feng asked first. Ashashi smiled in her pale golden eyes and shook her head slightly. I know as much about her as you do now. This surprised Qin Feng a little. He thought that Ashashi's knew everything about him. Successor, I only paid attention to you since you got the Eye of Judgment. Ashashi's chuckled. And you got the Eye of Judgment in your previous life. Qin Feng understood it after saying that. Before he got the Eye of Judgment in his previous life, Ashashi's didn't pay attention to him at all. Naturally, she didn't know much about his past. Qin Feng nodded. Then is there any way I can find out what happened in my previous reincarnation? Ashashi, it's very simple. After going to the Land of Order, find a way to enter the Samsara Temple. The power of the ancient god of reincarnation allows you to view all your past, but there is still a little threshold to enter the Samsara Temple. A little threshold? Qin Feng helplessly. I hope it's not a little bit, by the way. What did Qin Wuyu say about little authority? Is her blood source ancient god authority and my judgment authority the same concept? Ashashi shook her head slightly. Of course not. I have never heard of the little authority she mentioned. Perhaps it is a name that has been circulated privately by some player group. In fact, the so-called blood source ancient god's finger she possesses is just a mass-produced imitation, which only provides the rule ability with partial authority functions. This kind of item is called servant seal in the ancient god language. Of course, this name is only described from the perspective of the ancient gods and their servants. Later players may not know its real name, and call it sub-divine power, substitute divine power or small authority, etc., all of which refer to this thing. Hearing this, Qin Feng was a little silent. Servant seal. This is so interesting. That's right, Qin Feng thought for a moment. When players get this item, the ancient god can't directly tell the players that this thing is called servant seal, right? In order to make the players think that they have obtained something extraordinary, it is always necessary to say something more grand, because the culture of each civilization and each race is different. The names that have evolved in the end are also varied. Then, what about my Eye of Judgment? Is it authentic? Qin Feng didn't need to ask about this. Ashasis has already explained it very considerately. And the heir. Your authority of judgment is the original primary authority, which is different from those otherwise. I would not have come to see you. Qin Feng was still a little uncomfortable with what she said about audience. He smiled helplessly. Then I am lucky. I got the servant seal of the blood source ancient god first, but I lost it to someone else. In the end, I got the real authority of the ancient god. After hearing this, Ashaksisi smiled and shook her head. How can the real authority of the ancient god be obtained just by luck? Qin Feng thought about it. Really? I don't think the difficulty is particularly high, of course. It is difficult, but I always feel that it can't reach the level of judgment authority. Ashaksisi nodded slightly in front of him. Is there a possibility that there are many prerequisites for obtaining real authority, and these prerequisites have been achieved in your previous reincarnation? Of course. I don't know the specific situation. In short, since you have obtained the Eye of Judgment, you have obtained the recognition of authority. Hearing this, Qin Feng nodded slowly. It seems that if you want to know more, you can only wait until you go to the Land of Order to see if you can enter the Reincarnation Temple. Then, Qinfeng talked to Ashashis about the situation of the Servant Seal. This thing, although it is called the Servant Seal, actually has no binding force. However, after obtaining the Servant Seal, the player will register with the Ancient God Temple to which the Servant Seal belongs, basically becoming a senior member of the Ancient God Temple. The Servant Seal sounds a bit humiliating, but in fact, as long as you get the Servant Seal, your status in the Land of Order is very high. In a sense, they can indeed be regarded as the spokespersons of the ancient gods. It is conceivable. If Qinfeng rashly goes to the Land of Order without knowing anything, he may be hung up and beaten by Qin Wuyu. By the way, what about this thing? Qinfeng suddenly thought of something and took something out from his waist. It's the Soul Harvester White Bud Blade. This guy said she was once the owner of power. Who is she? Qinfeng played with the dagger in his hand. Is her soul power authentic? Ashashisi smiled helplessly. It's just a servant seal. However, this weapon is still quite good for you now? Is that so? In other words, the original body of this soul harvester is a being of the same nature as Qin Wuyu. However, Qin Wuyu is from the Blood Source Temple, and this Baiya is from the Soul Temple. Then what did she do to be made into a weapon? This matter is always terrifying when you think about it carefully. What Qinfeng didn't expect was that Ashashisi actually gave an answer to this question. She thought for a moment and said, I have never heard of this situation. But since it is a reward given by the End Road, then she must have violated the original agreement and suffered this punishment. Qinfeng was puzzled. Original agreement. Hush! Ashashis looked at him cautiously with her pale golden eyes. She stretched out a white jade finger and blocked Qinfeng's mouth. Remember, never say the name of this agreement in the ancient language. This is not what you should know now, but you need to know that the birth of the godforsaken game comes from this agreement. Qinfeng was a little dazed. The original agreement. This sounds like something very high-end. Could it be the agreement made by the ancient gods around the round table? Qinfeng naturally couldn't understand it now. However, it was the first time he saw Ashashisi showing such a cautious expression, so he naturally knew the seriousness of it. He nodded. I understand. He didn't want to be made into a dagger like Baiya. It can be seen that if something really happened because of violating the original agreement, even Ashashisi might not be able to save her. And Ashashisi told him about the original agreement, which was not aimless. Then she said, Here, you now have the ability to record Qin Xiaoyu's memory screen with the light and shadow crystal, and then play it to Blue Star. But this violates the original agreement. So, don't reveal the facts and rules of civilization, reincarnation, to civilizations that have not started to merge in any way. Qinfeng nodded solemnly after hearing this. He finally understood. The original agreement is not used to restrain ordinary people. It is used to restrain truly powerful beings. Ordinary players cannot violate this agreement even if they want to. And Ashashis' reminder to Qinfeng is indeed something he is capable of doing now. Although Qinfeng has not considered this aspect for the time being. He does have the feasibility, although I don't know what Baiya did wrong. But it's a bit miserable to be made into a weapon. Qinfeng held the S-shaped Baiya blade in his hand and sighed slightly. He could still feel the temperature of the dagger and the faint heartbeat, as if it came from another dimension. But it was connected to this dagger, which was very strange. Of course, as for the chat between Qinfeng and Ashashisi just now, this Baiya would not understand it even if he heard it, because they all use the Daxia language. If you really want to communicate with Baiya, I'm afraid you can only use the ancient god language, but Qinfeng is very skeptical. Even if she can hear the ancient god language, with a dagger, what can she use to communicate with herself? So, use it first. After finishing the work, Qinfeng took another look at Qin Xiaoyu's consciousness illusion before leaving. Originally, he just wanted to take a last look at her. But unexpectedly, Qin Xiaoyu seemed to have changed a little in that consciousness illusion. At this time, she was experiencing the stone mill hell. Qin Xiaoyu was tied to a giant stone mill with a diameter of tens of meters, unable to move, and the giant millstone was slowly approaching, and it was about to grind her into meat sauce. Qinfeng brother, I was wrong. I was really wrong. Let me out. Let me out. Please. Let me go. Woo woo woo. Ah! The giant millstone rolled over, accompanied by the sound of the stone mill roller, gradually grinding Qin Xiaoyu's legs into powder, making her scream in pain. Let me out. Qinfeng. I have very important news, No, it will be very dangerous if you don't know. You will die miserably. When Qinfeng heard these words, he was still a little surprised. This Qin Xiaoyu actually thinking about him. This isn't going to be a whitewash. Qinfeng looked a little strange. He thought about it, and still held the blade of judgment in his hand, exerted his authority, and temporarily released Qin Xiaoyu, wanting to hear what she wanted to say. Qin Xiaoyu was being crushed to pieces by a giant millstone. Originally, the pain of being crushed all over her body made her feel miserable. Suddenly, the scene in front of her changed. She found she was back to the White Jade Maze that she originally thought was a dream. Having just experienced so much torture from hell, her whole body seemed to be in extreme pain. Now that she had left the illusion, she was still shaking uncontrollably. Qin brother, you really let me out. When she came out, she looked at Qinfeng on the white jade platform, tears already streaming down her face. Qinfeng's eyes under the white mask were emotionless, and he asked lightly, What do you have to say? I'm sorry. Qin Xiaoyu lowered her head, and while speaking, she was still trembling slightly. Brother, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. Please let me out. I will be very obedient in the future. Okay, looking at her trembling body, you can feel that she is really scared, but being scared does not mean admitting your mistakes. On the surface, she is admitting her mistakes, but who knows what she is thinking? Qin Feng had encountered such a situation many times in his previous life, and he would never be fooled again. He asked coldly, "Have you forgotten? You have exhausted your lifespan and died in a cell in Zhanghai City? This is your final destination. You asked me to let you out where to go." Qin Xiaoyu widened his eyes and stared at him. "No, it's impossible. How could you really watch me die?" "Brother, you have a way to save me, right? You have the authority." "Yes. You have the authority of the ancient gods? You can definitely resurrect me. Then, we can join forces and overcome the difficulties together." "Brother, you died early in your previous life. I don't know what happened later. If you continue to develop, even if you are a shadow, you will definitely die. You are no match for the enemy. And I know who the enemy is. Who wants to kill you? Brother, let me help you." Obviously, she wanted to rely on the memories in her mind to win Qin Feng's forgiveness. Not only did she play the emotional card, but she also planned to create a sense of crisis for Qin Feng. Unfortunately, she didn't know that Qin Feng had already seen through everything through her memories. As for joining forces to overcome the difficulties, it's good enough not to be stabbed in the back by her, and you still expect her to help. "I'd rather believe that you will help me than to believe that I am Qin Shi Huang," Qin Feng sneered. "Anyway, my last name is Qin, so it makes sense that I am Qin Shi Huang, right?" I was too lazy to talk nonsense with the other party. Qin Feng raised his hand and waved the S-shaped Soul Harvester white bud blade in the air. A pale white knife light instantly sprinkled on Qin Xiaoyu in the air like moonlight, and instantly enveloped her whole body. Rule: Soul Control. Qin Feng still felt a little painful. This rule requires 400 points of divinity to activate, and the divinity replenishment ratio of the white bud blade is 1 point of divinity for 15 years. So activating Soul Control once will consume 6,000 years of life. However, Qin Feng is still quite curious about this rule. Qin Xiaoyu happens to come to the door, so let's test her. Just after Qin Xiaoyu was slashed by the pale white knife light, it seemed that a soul shadow on her body fell into stiffness, and Qin Feng had a feeling. He seemed to control Qin Xiaoyu's soul and could check the memories in her mind at will, as well as all her thoughts. Fuck! Can I really see what she is thinking? Qin Feng was shocked. This Soul Emperor's authority seems to have something, and this is still a low-level manifestation of authority, which comes from the Servant Seal. If you really master the authority of the soul, how powerful would it be? And when Qin Feng saw the thoughts in Qin Xiaoyu's mind, he felt even more shocked. There is no such thing as the most outrageous thing, only more outrageous things. Qin Feng could only say, "Amazing."